Early in April 2008, I began walking from Le-Puy-en-Velay towards Santiago de Compostela. My time in Europe began in Paris, where I followed some of the route that medieval pilgrims took through the city, past the Tour Saint-Jacques, newly restored, into Notre Dame, along the Rue Saint-Jacques, up the hill to the Church of Haut-Pas. There, it seemed like I'd stepped back almost into another age, and that I waved goodbye to the city with the throng of ancient pilgrims. After a non-medieval train trip to Le-Puy itself, I climbed up the steep approach to the 12th century cathedral that looked so solid and foreboding from below. When I had departed Le-Puy, I left with the blessing of the bishop, and it seemed like I walked under the protection of that blessing on my whole journey to Santiago. The hill out of the volcanic basin that Le-Puy-en-Velay rested in soon led to some flatter paths above. Immediately I had a sense of joy. A simple thing like seeing the sunlight on the back of some seed heads brought a sense of peace that was to remain with me for the whole walk. The route unfolded through some beautiful landscapes, up and down hills and past many old villages and towns. But not everything in the next 10 days was easy. My feet became very tender, and after 3 days of having saturated feet I had blisters. There was lots of time to think, and not all of those thoughts were easy ones. But one of the treasures of the Camino was time to reflect, and somewhere in these early days I learned to be thankful for all the good that each day brought. When I think back to those walking days, one of the strongest things in my memory is the kindness of people that I met. There were so many French speakers who took special care of me because I did not always understand everything that was going on. There were 4 ladies from St. Etienne who saved a place for me at the meal table and who spoke slowly so I wasn't lonely. There were the lovely ladies in the Gîte in Limogne with whom I laughed outrageously in a way that I think only long-distance walkers can understand. There were Françoise and Roger, who ran after me on the plateau above Cahors to give me fresh cold water on a very hot day, when they knew I'd run out. There were the 2 lovely ladies who saw my tears as I sat beside the river lot in a stang on the day I'd decided I needed a rest day for my blisters. They took me across to the cafe and brought me a hot chocolate, and we talked while I cried. My list of so many kind people could go on and on. There are too some special people with whom I shared more deeply. There were Lynn and Denis from Montreal. We met near Cahors, met often over the weeks to come, and walked into Santiago together 2 months later. One of the very special times we had together was at Orison, when we watched a rainbow in the evening stretched out in front of the vast landscape of the mountains. This is a memory I will treasure forever. And there was Francis. Sometimes on the Camino you only needed to meet someone for a few days, yet came to appreciate the depths within them. Francis struck me as a prayerful man who thought a lot about others. When we met for the last time on his last evening in Santiago, he told me I was a beautiful flower of the Camino, but that a flower sometimes has to die to make a seed. His words remain within me. I hope that I too helped some others along the way. I know that the Englishman Keith was inspired by my determination. My thoughts still rest with a very unhappy young woman I met in a village cafe one morning, and I hope that something I said may have helped her in her desperation. I remember also the landscapes, so many different landscapes in my mind, with pictures of winter and spring and early summer. There were the mountains that I crossed, where sometimes I was rewarded with spectacular views and sometimes saw only mist. In Spain, sometimes the track spread out far into the distance ahead of me, and red poppies dotted the green crops of the fields. There were also the close-up parts of the landscape, like slugs crossing the path, and the spiderwebs covered in dewdrops in the early morning. I always found it a special time when I walked in the early morn, enjoying the quiet as the world awoke for a new day. All these things seeped within me as I walked. Walking became such a natural thing to do, and the rhythm of walking brought a special kind of peace deep within. The life of a long-distance walker was a simple one. I carried only what I needed, and what I thought I needed got less and less as time went on. There was a simple rhythm to every day that revolved round walking, then finding shelter, food, and a place to wash your clothes so you could wear them again the next day. And there was friendship with others who also walked with joy and simplicity. Finally, after nearly 3 months of walking, I stood in front of the cathedral in Santiago in the company of Lynn and Denis. At that moment, I knew that I'd achieved something that was at the one time both simple and remarkable. It was simple, as really the walk was just a succession of day walks, most of them not very difficult. And yet it was also quite remarkable, as I'd been walking for so many weeks through so many landscapes and seasons. The Camino touched me deeply. Was I a walker or a pilgrim? I never quite decided. But on my 13th day after leaving Le-Puy, as I descended into the valley that held the medieval gem of Conques, I knew I'd changed within. And something about the simplicity and the rhythm of that walking life lives on deep within me. I find myself thinking back to those walking days, thinking about the people I met, the landscapes I passed through, the thoughts that passed through my mind, the weather conditions at the time. Mostly what I recall are the kindnesses that I met along the way, with simplicity and rhythm in that walking life. A joyful time.